You're listening to Multifamily with Mosley. On today's episode, we're joined by Todd Spitalny, our host, and James Alley, Director of Procurement at Mosley Multifamily, as they discuss the 3 things you need to know about supply chain management. Let's listen in.
Well, welcome back to part 2 of the series with James Alley, talking about procurement and how the current market and what we're seeing. So today we wanted to kind of talk about the tools needed and the steps that need to be taken in order to combat the supply chain procurement issues that are going on. James, like this is something you could talk for days about, right? This is something you're passionate about. So let me jump right in. I'm gonna turn the show to you. So, what are the 3 biggest things that we need to combat? Go ahead and give it to us. Give me your best.
Number one, the biggest is predicting the schedule. That's number one. The second one really is the technology needed to get the orders and the transparency to their clients, to our field teams, to everybody in the office, so they're on the same page. And then also the cash flow, as deposits are needed for materials and ahead of time due to terms with appliances, different vendors, you name it. Everybody's wanting cash up front to make these deposits to get the material to the sites.
Well, let me start with there. I mean, I want to get back to the technology, but you just talked about the cash flow is in the bottom of the deposits. Are you talking about us giving deposits? You're talking about manufacturers having to get deposits on the raw materials? You talking about suppliers getting it? What are you talking about there?
All the above. Right now, material deposits weren't something that was always needed for contractors in the past, but right now, getting that additional lead time that's needed, a lot of the terms that are set out for contractors tend to be 30, 60, 90-day terms. When it's taking 90 to 120 days to get material in, you're having to order that 120, 180 days in advance. And that brings, right back to that predicting the schedule with our clients. How many units historically are they looking to renovate? And then we need to bring that forward into the future to how much inventory we're going to need to have, discuss with our vendors, bring it in from the manufacturers that they have the partnerships with, or go directly to the manufacturer and have them bring that in, warehouse it, and get it to us in full truckloads if need be. So we have the material to start with. And that is number one, cash flow to get that going.
Well, you're talking about the ability to predict. What technology do you need to do that?
Tracking material is one thing for one job, but when you're doing 100 separate jobs, essentially, because every apartment's its own unique job that we renovate, that we are having to track that on a massive scale for every team, so they have the same visibility. So using technology such as procurement systems that send out the information with the times and dates needed, all the parts and pieces for each individual vendor, and then relaying that information to our field team of when it's coming, who's it coming from. And that coordination is great for the team, but it also transmits back to a transparency to accounting. That way we're looking at our budgets. We know what the material is going to cost. We know on a weekly basis what our spend's going to be. So we can predict that and make sure that if we truly do need, $1 million cash influx just to buy enough appliances for the 4 properties that we need, that's what we need. And we mention appliances a lot because that is one of the largest cost items on our jobs that we renovate. And that number, multiplies instantly.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I know that we use a lot of is rent rolls for our clients, right? We look historically what their rent are, what their leasing cycles may be. We know that in the multifamily, the bell curve of the move out cycles, we have to be able to predict based on what their project goals, what their cash flow intake is going to be from operating expense to all of it. And it also depends on how they're funding the projects. But as we talk about this, that rent roll and putting it into a system that creates a predictability of how many units are going to come 60, 90 days out is pretty important. The question I would ask is, for the marketplace is, do your people that you're working with have that predictability? Do the properties themselves have that predictability? We've had to create that for ourselves in order to create that prediction based on our experience in the industry. So those are big things. But when we're talking about prediction, we look at the total project needs, what the length of the project is, how many they're going to do. If it's a 200 unit project over a 3-year cycle, okay, you know what the numbers are. You're roughly about 67, 68 units a year. Okay, when is most of that cycle going to happen? So when you know that the summer months are coming, you've got May, which is the start of the spike, right? And we know the highest point. When are you starting to place that order for those units for June 1 starts? When are you starting to legitimately place those orders?
In past years, it could have been 3 weeks or less even. It would come right in. Now we're looking at 30 to 45 days at a minimum, and then projecting forward on additional items right now. So we're coming into our summer months. You mentioned it's our busier time of year. Over the winter, less move outs. That's historic data that we can pull from every rent roll, from every leasing agency that our sales team walks in and discusses. It's one of our questions that we ask: how many renovations are you looking to achieve? If it's a really high number, then we really have to dial it in on what we're looking to order and if it can actually be feasible for the property. If it's not feasible, our sales team is discussing that with them, whether, working hand in hand with the estimating department, which, comes right down to procurement, to making sure that we are buying everything that is budgeted for our clients with enough lead time for us to get the materials, stay on task, and turn over the project so the clients can get their move-in dates and they have a new tenant and they're making the return on their investment sooner than later.
Yeah, I mean, I know our goal is always the day after move out to be in that unit. That's our goal, right? We want to reduce that amount of vacancy by getting there as fast as we can. So obviously, our ability to order material, whether it's via truckload, which kitchen at a time, all of these are important. How many vendors are you for one unit having to order from to get all of it if you're doing a full scope? How many vendors do you think you're ordering from?
Every project's unique and different, but at a minimum, you're 5 separate vendors, just at the very least, 5 to 12 on certain projects, really depending on what the scope of work is. Finding specialty items can take a long lead time. It may look amazing when you get in there, but this is something that we have to work with sales to say, can we get this item? Is it going to be a long lead? If it is, we need to talk to the manufacturer, have them ramp up production, get those to our vendors so they can be warehoused and or order them ahead of time. So we're not looking at a 3 to 6 month delay for the stainless steel option that you're wanting to switch to. And those are things that come up. We sometimes have to switch options. On our last episode, we discussed going black, stainless steel on appliances. In 2021, we did see the black appliances ramp up and stainless steel decline. And then it switched over 3 months later. And we're having to pivot back and forth to make sure that we're accommodating the changes that the clients want in their specs, and that we're able to maintain it. As it's a fluid motion of supplies coming in and out. And that's where the transparency between ourselves, our internal departments, and externally going to our clients, that communication factor is there. So they know what to anticipate. They can tell their guests, they can sell it properly, and they can put the tenants in the apartments that they want. And, it creates that cash flow cycle.
Yeah, and that's something that we've talked about. Coming from my past life of working for manufacturers as well as suppliers, historically we've always used borrowing, every month to be able to fund inventory every month. Literally borrowing money, paying money, borrowing money, paying money. Now with the current banking crisis that's going on, potentially borrowing that money is even more difficult. They need their projections out 6 months, a year, in order to be able to get their borrowing up. The same thing with some of these purchase pricing of some of these apartments, I believe, is going on as well. We've seen during the due diligence process getting tighter and tighter and tighter in the requirements for the banks. And as a result of it, historically, our industry has never wanted to do deposits. You just never did, didn't need to. But now with having to purchase, everyone's having to purchase upfront, requiring deposits. Doesn't matter what your payment history is, your credit history is. You got to put it up front. So let's talk about a little bit more about that technology piece. What are some of the tools you're using in order to predict and to track? What are some of those things?
We do use a procurement software that allows us to track every dollar in Costco that we have for all of our budgets. So we set our budget out, and it allows the procurement department to submit these orders based upon the contracts that we have with our vendors. and to ensure that the invoicing is coming back in on the accounting side that matches the exact cost that we were supposed to be paying. Now, not everything is always the same, but it allows us to catch these items, go back to our vendors, and make sure that they are handling our agreed upon contracted amount, because that's very vital for our clients' projections, that they're getting charged properly, our cash flow, making sure the margins and overhead are maintained so we can have the proper amount of staff on each site in the office that's really needed to communicate effectively with everybody from all parts of pretty much every part of the cycle that it takes for the renovation
Now,
to occur.
so I think the bigger question of that, other than the cash flow, because that's always important, is tracking of items, tracking of the back orders, finding out how early are we finding out in the process, because there's nothing more frustrating than placing an order. Hey, your delivery date's on Monday, and then finding out Monday that something was missing. How early does that technology allow you to predict what's going to be back ordered and whether or not you need to pivot or change?
Day one. So in the procurement department, and all orders are sent out, and each one of us track every order with our specific project contact. So we send out all of our orders to each individual vendor, 5, 10, however many it is. They respond back with what's going to be back ordered, the lead time it's going to take to get that. So if we have something projected 30 days out, I know it's going to take 25 days to arrive. Green light, no issues whatsoever. We have 21 days to renovate an apartment. It gives me 45 days to bring in that appliance set. So it's an individual basis per unit, per job, trying to budget, maintain as well, that do we have an alternate needed? I think that's my biggest concern, is if it's 3 months out or it comes back and says no ETA, then right there, red light, stop. Everybody look into what's needed. I'm on the phone to you immediately. I need an alternate for this. What does our client like? Is this an option? Presenting you with the facts so you can present it to the clients as well.
So I think that one of the key things that needs to be done in that process is upfront, and we try to work with everyone to create that backup list, right? There must be a backup list developed upfront before the project starts, in the case of emergencies. And oftentimes we're down to our 3 and 4 options at times for a light fixture that's out. Oftentimes it can cost us more, cost us less. Doesn't really matter. That's not the point. The point is getting that material in that unit done on time, because that additional cost of a unit not being available, that's additional waste that our clients can't afford. If a unit sits down for additional 15 days because a fridge wasn't there or a range wasn't there, that's a half month's rent. We do that 10 times over in a month of May. Well, that's 2 additional units that you can't renovate that year. Well, that hurts the bottom line. So those are really important things. And, one of the things that's challenging for us, and you and I have talked about this quite a bit, when we work with vendors who don't have the ability to have that technology communicate, when they don't have the ability to look into their inventory systems, all of those things that give us insight into what's going to happen 60, 70 days out, that's important to us. Like using electronic, the EDI system that sends over every night at midnight, that's huge because it gives us an automatic report the next morning of what's backordered items. Well, if we have a vendor that doesn't have that system set up, now we're relying on, let me look in the system and see if it's there. That's a scary proposition because everyone knows, hey, I placed an order online, we thought it was on the shelf, and guess what? It wasn't there. So it's really important that we have that opportunity. So, James, what are other key things that we need to be discussing as we move forward?
I think one of the biggest key things moving forward is, just the communication. I've said it many times in this is, communication with our clients and letting them know, working with additional national vendors, because certain items will not be stocked on the East Coast that we need, and it comes elsewhere. There could be 500 sitting in a depot that this particular person may not be thinking of. And it's for us in the procurement field to find this material wherever it is. We have to go find it and bring it in. And that's creating new relationships, going to trade shows, finding something that is a new product that maybe the client hasn't seen before. And there's an ample volume to that. So we're able to bring that material in, present that as an option. I think that's one of the biggest items, is really talking to the clients and being able to find something on the fly that changes not this price point, but the finish is maintained as well.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing is flexibility, right? It's the flexibility in the market moving forward is something that we all have to get used to. We all have to be better at communication, use the tools in our space, use every bit that we can, and be more comfortable with change, because it's not something we've done in our market for a very long time. We're used to changing product for, to change the look. We're used to doing that, but what we're not used to doing is changing process, changing technologies, changing the way we've done business over the past, and also changing our relationships as they grow. Listen, James, it's been a pleasure as always talking with you. I want to thank you for joining us today. Stay tuned for more. We'll have more future guests on that are going to really shed some great light on this. So I want to thank you. And if you want to debate us, come on board. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to this month's episode of Multifamily with Mosley. We're excited to join you next month with a whole new episode.